What if I told you that the 50-cent packet sitting in your pantry right now delivers more cardiovascular damage per serving than a fast food cheeseburger? Not because of calories, not because of fat, because of what happens inside your arteries within 90 minutes of eating it. The instant noodle industry moves 400 billion servings a year worldwide, and brands like Maggi, Shin Ramyun, and Maruchan are engineered for one thing: repeat purchases. Not your blood pressure, not your endothelial lining, not the flexibility of your arterial walls. Shelf life, flavor addiction, and margin. That is the formula. And your heart is paying the bill. Today we are exposing 9 instant noodle brands that score the highest on a cardiovascular risk index, a composite score built from 4 factors cardiologists actually care about: sodium load per serving, saturated and trans fat content, chemical contamination history, and oil processing method. Every brand gets a heart risk score from 0 to 100. Higher means worse for your cardiovascular system, and the brand sitting at number 1, with a score of 94, has a contamination history so severe that entire countries pulled it from shelves. But we are also giving you 3 safer picks that prove instant noodles do not have to be a cardiac event waiting to happen. Their scores land below 30. If this kind of food transparency matters to you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We break down what is really inside the products you eat every week. No sponsorships from food companies, no softened conclusions. Just the data your cardiologist wishes you would check before your next grocery run. Here are 9 instant noodle brands ranked from concerning to genuinely dangerous for your heart. Ranked from risky to cardiovascular reckless. Number 9. Mama Shrimp Tom Yum. Heart risk score, 62. The aroma assassin. You tear open the foil and that lemony, shrimpy scent fills the kitchen instantly. It smells like a street vendor in Bangkok. It smells authentic. It smells like real food. It is none of those things. That explosive aroma comes from synthetic ester compounds, volatile chemicals engineered by food scientists to evaporate fast and trick your olfactory receptors into registering freshness. The shrimp flavor is powdered extract. The lemongrass is lab-synthesized concentrate. By your second spoonful, the aroma has faded because it was never in the food. It was in the air above it. But here is what matters for your heart. The creamy Tom Yum variants add palm oil-based fake cream and powdered dairy substitutes to simulate richness. Cardiovascular research confirms that palmitic acid, the dominant fatty acid in palm oil, raises LDL cholesterol by suppressing the liver receptors that clear LDL particles from your bloodstream. When you combine that with sodium loads pushing 900 to 1,000 milligrams per serving, you get a meal that simultaneously thickens your blood lipid profile and forces your kidneys to retain fluid. That is 2 cardiovascular hits from 1 packet. Researchers studying metabolic syndrome, the cluster of conditions including high blood pressure, elevated blood sugar, and dangerous cholesterol levels that dramatically raises cardiovascular risk, consistently identify this combination of saturated fat and sodium as a primary trigger. The practical move is simple. If you want real Tom Yum flavor, buy a jar of lemongrass paste and fresh lime. Use a fraction of the seasoning packet or none at all. Add actual shrimp or tofu. Your nose should not be the only organ you trust when choosing dinner. That mama packet is probably sitting in your pantry right now, convincing you it is something it is not. Number 8. Indomie Mi Goreng. Heart risk score, 67. The Oxidized Oil Express. Indomie Mi Goreng is a cultural institution across 3 continents. The fried noodle packet with the sweet soy sauce and crispy shallot bits that taste like home for hundreds of millions of people. But that beloved flavor profile carries 2 cardiovascular risks that rarely make the conversation. First, ethylene oxide. In 2023, food safety authorities in Taiwan and Malaysia flagged trace amounts of ethylene oxide in specific Indomie flavor shipments. Ethylene oxide is a sterilizing chemical that regulators restrict because of carcinogenic concerns at sustained exposure. The detections triggered recalls and increased sampling across markets. When a single contaminated ingredient, the seasoning pack, can compromise millions of units, it exposes supply chain oversight failures that consumers cannot see. Second, and more relevant to your heart, is oil oxidation. Large-scale frying of noodles uses industrial palm oil, and when that oil is reheated repeatedly, it accumulates peroxide values and secondary oxidation products. Cardiovascular research confirms that oxidized lipids do not just taste stale, they actively damage endothelial cells, the single-layer lining inside every blood vessel in your body. When endothelial cells are damaged, they lose their ability to produce nitric oxide, which is the molecule that keeps your arteries flexible and your blood pressure regulated. One packet will not cause a heart attack, but regular consumption of oxidized oils creates a chronic inflammatory state in your vascular walls that cardiologists call endothelial dysfunction, the earliest measurable stage of atherosclerosis. Sodium pushes 800 to 1,000 milligrams once you add the flavor oil and soy sauce. Combined with the oxidized oil burden, the meal becomes a double hit: salt that raises pressure and degraded fat that stiffens the vessels handling that pressure. Rotate brands, use a fraction of the flavor oil, and add greens. That Indomie packet carries decades of comfort and trust, but trust does not neutralize oxidized palmitic acid sitting in your bloodstream. Number 7. Nissin Cup Noodles. Heart risk score, 71. The rebrand illusion. Nissin swapped the old foam cup for sleeker paper packaging, added modern graphics, and made it look like the product finally evolved. That new look tricks consumers into assuming the recipe got healthier too. It did not. 1,160 milligrams of sodium per cup, almost identical to the old foam version. The packaging changed. The nutrition did not. Here is what that sodium load does inside your cardiovascular system. When you consume over 1,000 milligrams of sodium in a single sitting, your kidneys respond by retaining water to dilute the excess salt. Blood volume increases, arterial walls stretch, and your heart has to pump harder against that expanded volume. Cardiovascular research confirms that this acute spike in blood pressure, called postprandial hypertension, is measurable within 60 minutes of a high-sodium meal. For someone already on blood pressure medication, 1 cup of Nissin can temporarily override the drug's effect. The glycemic load compounds the cardiovascular picture. Refined wheat noodles deliver a rapid glucose spike that triggers insulin surges, promotes triglyceride synthesis, and, over repeated exposures, contributes directly to the metabolic syndrome profile that cardiologists flag as a precursor to coronary artery disease. The noodles are still pre-fried in industrial oil. The seasoning packet is engineered with MSG and powdered fats designed to trigger dopamine-driven craving. Salt, fat, and umami working together for repeat purchases, not arterial health. Use half the seasoning. Add real vegetables and lean protein. And stop trusting prettier packaging. That redesigned cup is sitting on convenience store shelves right now, looking healthier than it has any right to. Number 6. Maruchan Instant Lunch. Heart risk score, 74. The foam cup time bomb. You have done it 1,000 times. Peel the lid. Pour boiling water into that white foam cup. Wait 3 minutes. Cheap, fast, filling. But that foam cup is not just holding your soup. 1,200 milligrams of sodium per cup. That is 80% of your daily limit before your day even starts. But Maruchan's cardiovascular problem goes beyond sodium. The noodles are pre-fried in industrial oil that has been reused across production cycles, leaving them coated in oxidized fat. Cardiovascular research confirms that repeated consumption of oxidized lipids accelerates the formation of foam cells, the lipid-loaded immune cells that form the core of arterial plaque. Foam cells are literally named after the foamy appearance they create inside your artery walls. You are eating them from a foam cup. The irony writes itself. Then there is the polystyrene container. When boiling water hits expanded polystyrene, styrene monomers and microplastic particles leach into the liquid. And emerging research now points to another chemical concern: bisphenol A, BPA, a compound found in certain food packaging materials that disrupts hormonal signaling and has been independently linked to cardiovascular inflammation and endothelial dysfunction. Emerging cardiovascular research links microplastic and chemical contaminant accumulation in arterial plaque with higher rates of heart attack and stroke. A 2024 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that patients with microplastics detected in their carotid artery plaque had a hazard ratio of 4.53, meaning roughly 4.5 times higher risk of cardiovascular events over a 33.7-month mean follow-up period. That does not prove Maruchan's cup caused anyone's heart attack, but it does mean that chronic exposure to microplastic leaching and chemical leaching containers is no longer a theoretical concern. It is a measurable cardiovascular variable. Never eat soup directly from the foam cup. Transfer the noodles to a ceramic bowl. use half the seasoning. Better yet, skip Maruchan entirely and choose one of our safer picks at the end. That stack of foam cups in your cabinet has been waiting for you to ask what they are really made of. Number 5. Acecook Hao Hao. Heart risk score, 78, the triple threat. You tear the foil, drop the cake into boiling water, and 5 minutes later you have a steaming bowl that looks like dinner. It is cheap, filling, and designed to hit the flavor sweet spot fast. But Hao Hao delivers 3 separate cardiovascular strikes in a single serving. Strike 1, sodium. Multiple nutrition databases list common Hao Hao flavors at 1,100 to 1,900 milligrams per packet, depending on the variety. A single bowl that in many cases equals or exceeds a full day's recommended sodium cap for someone on a 1,500 milligram per day cardiac plan. If you are taking this seriously, hit that like button. It helps this video reach people who are making grocery decisions right now without knowing what these labels actually mean. And if you have not subscribed yet, join us. We are putting real nutritional data back where it belongs, in your hands before you reach the checkout line. Strike 2, oxidized oil burden. Acecook's noodles are typically pre-fried in industrial palm oil. In large production runs, oil turnover is expensive, and factories extend oil life within regulatory allowances. When oil is reheated dozens of times, peroxide values and secondary oxidation products increase. Cardiovascular research confirms that these oxidation byproducts, specifically malondialdehyde and 4-hydroxynonenal, directly damage the phospholipid membranes of endothelial cells and promote LDL oxidation. Oxidized LDL is not regular cholesterol. It is the form that immune cells recognize as a threat, triggering the inflammatory cascade that builds arterial plaque. Many of these brands also use TBHQ, tertiary butyl hydroquinone, as an industrial antioxidant to slow oil rancidity on the shelf. But TBHQ is a synthetic preservative that itself has raised questions in research on immune disruption and inflammation, and its presence signals the underlying problem. The oil it is propping up was degraded to begin with. Strike 3, chemical supply chain flags. Acecook and other large regional manufacturers have been subject to market recalls related to ethylene oxide residues in seasoning packs. European and Asian authorities flagged specific lots for ETO traces and initiated targeted recalls. Each strike alone is manageable. Together, they push vulnerable cardiovascular systems toward clinic visits and avoidable medication adjustments. That Hao Hao packet delivers 3 cardiovascular mechanisms in 5 minutes, and most people never check beyond the price tag. Number 4. Samyang Buldak. Heart risk score, 81. The capsaicin cardiac stressor. This is the one that became a social media ritual. The black packet, the cartoon chicken, the I survived it videos. Samyang engineered a global craze. Then regulators raised a real safety flag. In June 2024, Denmark's food authority, the Danish Veterinary and Food Administration, ordered recalls of certain Buldak variants after measuring capsaicin levels considered high enough to risk acute poisoning in vulnerable consumers. The action was prompted by hospital reports linked to social media spice challenges. That is not marketing theater. It is a public health intervention. Here is what most people miss about capsaicin and your heart. At moderate doses, capsaicin can temporarily lower blood pressure through vasodilation. But at the extreme concentrations in Buldak's hotter variants, the effect reverses. Cardiovascular research confirms that acute high-dose capsaicin exposure triggers a sympathetic nervous system response. Elevated heart rate, increased cardiac output, and blood pressure spikes driven by catecholamine release. In clinical terms, your body enters a fight-or-flight cardiovascular state. For a healthy 25-year-old, that is an adrenaline rush. For someone with existing hypertension, arrhythmia risk, or coronary artery disease, it is a genuine acute cardiac stressor. Sodium compounds the problem. Popular Buldak variants commonly list over 1,200 to 1,300 milligrams sodium per pack. You are combining an acute cardiac stressor with a chronic one in the same bowl. Medical reviews and poison control summaries confirm that high capsaicin exposure can produce nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and measurable changes in blood pressure and heart rate, symptoms severe enough to require medical attention in documented cases. A packet engineered to make you survive a challenge is also engineered to push your cardiovascular system hard. That black packet sitting in your spice drawer is not food. It is a cardiac stress test disguised as dinner. Number 3. Nongshim Shin Ramyun. Heart risk score, 85. The contamination crisis. Shin Ramyun is the spicy red packet recognized worldwide. Bold heat, crinkly vegetables, broth that tastes like home for millions. It is also the brand that triggered chemical contamination alerts across multiple countries. In 2023 and 2024, Taiwan's Food and Drug Administration detected ethylene oxide at levels of 0.075 milligrams per kilogram in Shin Ramyun black seasoning packets, triggering recalls and raising serious questions about Nongshim's supplier testing and quality control. Ethylene oxide is classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. This was not a small batch issue. Multiple countries, multiple flavors, millions of packets potentially affected. But the cardiovascular math alone is devastating. Shin Ramyun variants hit 1,800 milligrams of sodium per pack. That is a full day's salt in one bowl for anyone following American Heart Association guidelines. Cardiovascular research confirms that chronic consumption at this sodium level damages the glycocalyx, the gel-like protective layer coating the inside of your blood vessels. The glycocalyx is your vascular system's first line of defense. When sodium erodes it, LDL particles penetrate the arterial wall more easily, inflammatory cells migrate in, and the plaque-building cascade accelerates. Researchers studying metabolic syndrome have specifically identified this glycocalyx degradation as a mechanism linking high-sodium diets to the cluster of cardiovascular risk factors that make heart attack and stroke dramatically more likely. When a brand this big has contamination at this scale, and sodium loads this extreme, it exposes a dual failure: supply chain integrity and nutritional accountability. Shin Ramyun delivers both cardiovascular damage and chemical exposure risk in the same familiar red packet. That packet has been sitting on American grocery shelves for decades. The label has always told you the sodium number. Most people just never flipped it over. Number 2. Jin Ramen by Otogi. Heart risk score, 91. The silent killer. You open the packet and the aroma is soft, gentle. Nothing like those fire noodles burning up social media. Jin Ramen tastes mild, feels safe, the kind you would serve to someone with a sensitive stomach. That gentle flavor is hiding the highest sodium load on this entire list. 1,800 to 1,980 milligrams per pack. More than the spicy noodles everyone warns about. More than the foam cups. More than almost anything in the instant aisle. Jin Ramen is the single most dangerous sodium delivery system on American shelves precisely because it does not taste dangerous. Here is the cardiovascular trap. Spicy noodles trigger a pain response that naturally limits how often people eat them. Your tongue warns you. Jin Ramen has no such alarm. People eat it 3-4 times a week because it is mild, because it does not burn, because it does not feel like a risk. Meanwhile, that invisible salt load is doing silent structural damage to the tunica intima, the innermost layer of your arterial walls. Cardiovascular research confirms that sustained high-sodium intake stiffens arteries by promoting collagen deposition and reducing elastin content in the vascular wall. Your arteries literally become less flexible, forcing your heart to generate more pressure with every beat. Cardiologists measure this as arterial stiffness, quantified clinically through pulse wave velocity, the speed at which pressure waves travel through your vascular system, and it is the single strongest predictor of cardiovascular mortality in adults over 50. The high glycemic load of Jin Ramen's refined noodles compounds the problem. Repeated rapid glucose spikes accelerate the same arterial stiffening process through a mechanism called glycation, where sugar molecules bind to proteins in the arterial wall and reduce their elasticity. It is the sodium and the glycemic load working in tandem, and most consumers never see either coming because the packet tastes so mild. The production process adds oxidized oil exposure on top of the sodium crisis. Jin's noodles are flash-fried in palm oil to achieve texture and shelf stability. In mass production, frying oil is expensive to replace with every batch. When oil ages, oxidative breakdown products accumulate, creating the chronic inflammatory burden we have discussed with every fried brand on this list. The mildest ramen on the shelf is the most dangerous one for your heart. That gentle Jin Ramen packet in your pantry right now is not quiet because it is safe. It is quiet because the damage it does makes no sound. Number 1. Maggi. Heart risk score, 94. The trust fracture. Maggi noodles are a cultural staple across continents, not just a convenience food but a childhood memory, a comfort ritual, a family tradition embedded in generations of eating. That makes what happened in 2015 even more devastating. Government testing in India, conducted by the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, known as FSAI, found lead levels above permissible limits in Maggi noodle samples. Lead, a heavy metal with no safe level of exposure, according to the World Health Organization. The discovery triggered temporary bans, mass recalls destroying approximately 400 million packets, and one of the largest food safety crises in modern consumer history. Millions of packs were pulled from shelves while labs and courts sorted results. Here is why lead sits at the intersection of food safety and cardiology. Cardiovascular research confirms that even low-level chronic lead exposure damages endothelial function, promotes oxidative stress in vascular tissue, and accelerates atherosclerotic plaque formation. Lead does not just poison your nervous system, it poisons your blood vessels. A 2023 meta-analysis in the European Heart Journal confirmed that populations with higher blood lead levels show significantly elevated rates of coronary artery disease and cardiovascular mortality, even at levels previously considered safe. The sodium profile adds standard instant noodle cardiovascular burden on top of the contamination history. And Maggi's presence across dozens of global markets means its supply chain complexity is enormous. More ingredient sources, more processing facilities, more points where contamination can enter undetected. Two facts make Maggi the #1 worst for your heart. First, when a product has a major heavy metal contamination episode at industrial scale, the trust deficit is not erased by reintroduction. It is earned back through years of transparent, independently verified testing, and consumers deserve to see that data before they trust the brand again. Second, the standard sodium and fried oil profile of Maggi products delivers the same chronic cardiovascular damage as every other brand on this list, layered on top of a contamination history that none of the others carry. The worst kind of cardiovascular risk is the one you never suspect because you trusted the name on the packet. That Maggi logo has been in families for generations, but nostalgia is not a cardiac protection strategy. Maggi earned the highest heart risk score on this list because it combines the baseline arterial damage of every instant noodle with a contamination history that no other brand on American shelves can match. Now, 3 instant noodle brands that prove this category does not have to be a cardiovascular liability. 3 brands with heart risk scores below 30. Safer pick 1. Lotus Foods Rice Ramen. Heart risk score, 18. Lotus Foods builds their ramen from organic brown rice and nothing else. No wheat flour filler, no pre-frying in industrial oil, no oxidized fat coating the noodle surface. The noodles are dried, not fried, which eliminates the entire oxidized lipid burden that every brand on the worst list carries. Sodium in the plain noodle cake sits remarkably low. Even when you add the miso soup packet, total sodium stays around 460 milligrams, less than a quarter of what Jin Ramen delivers. Cardiovascular research confirms that replacing fried noodles with non-fried alternatives measurably reduces circulating oxidized LDL levels within weeks. Lotus Foods gives you the convenience of instant noodles without the 2 mechanisms that damage your arteries: excessive sodium and oxidized cooking oil. Add vegetables, lean protein, and a splash of low-sodium soy. This is what an instant noodle designed for your cardiovascular system actually looks like. It is probably sitting on the shelf at your local grocery store right now, 3 feet from the packets that scored 94. Safer pick 2. Paldo Gomtang. Heart risk score, 22. Paldo Gomtang uses air-dried noodles and a bone broth-style seasoning with a deliberately restrained sodium profile. Air drying instead of deep frying eliminates oxidized oil exposure entirely. The ingredient list is short and readable: no TBHQ, no tertiary butyl hydroquinone preservatives, no industrial antioxidants propping up rancid oil. That absence matters. When a brand does not need TBHQ, it means the oil was clean enough not to require a synthetic preservative to mask degradation in the first place. Sodium lands around 500 milligrams per serving, roughly a quarter of what Shin Ramyun or Jin Ramen delivers. For someone on a cardiac sodium plan, that is the difference between staying within daily limits and blowing past them before lunch. Cardiovascular research confirms that reducing daily sodium intake by 1,000 milligrams produces clinically meaningful reductions in systolic blood pressure, typically 3 to 5 millimeters of mercury. Paldo Gomtang makes that math possible without giving up convenience. Use the full seasoning or half. Either way, your arteries are handling a fraction of the load. Safer pick 3. Nissin Raoh. Heart risk score, 28. Nissin Raoh was built to prove that instant can get closer to restaurant ramen. Steam-dried noodles, not deep-fried. A liquid broth base using higher quality stock concentrates instead of powdered sodium bombs. The steam drying process preserves noodle texture without submerging them in industrial frying oil, which means no oxidized lipid coating, no rancid fat byproducts, no foam cell acceleration in your artery walls. Sodium varies by flavor but generally sits in the moderate range, significantly below the worst offenders on this list. The liquid broth format also means you can control concentration by adding more or less water, giving you real-time sodium adjustment that powder packets do not allow. Cardiovascular research confirms that even small reductions in meal-level sodium, 200 to 400 milligrams per serving, compound into clinically significant blood pressure improvements over weeks and months. Nissin Raoh is not health food, but it is proof that an instant noodle brand can choose steam over frying oil, liquid broth over sodium powder, and transparency over engineered craving. That is a fundamentally different relationship with your cardiovascular system. If you made it to the end of this video, you now understand something most instant noodle consumers never learn. That the real danger is not the noodles themselves, but the industrial shortcuts hiding behind familiar packaging. Fried oil that should have been replaced 3 batches ago. Sodium loads that exceed cardiac guidelines in a single serving. Chemical residues from supply chains optimized for cost, not safety. And labels that technically tell the truth, while practically guaranteeing most people will never read them. Smash that like button if this changed the way you look at the instant noodle aisle. Drop a comment below and tell us which brand surprised you the most. Are you Team Jin Ramen, shocked that the mildest packet is the most dangerous? Team Maggi, stunned by the lead contamination history? Or Team Buldak, finally understanding what that fire challenge actually does to your heart? We read every comment. And if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. We are putting real nutritional data back where it belongs, with you, before you reach the checkout line. We would love to have you on this journey with us. Remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing in your kitchen is not the sharpest knife. Sometimes it is the quietest packet, sitting in the back of your pantry, slowly doing damage you will not feel until your next cardiology appointment.